Hello people of YouTube. Today, finally after a long break, I'm gonna be bringing a new video on the channel. And today we're gonna be looking at RUGaggro and the deck list I've won with and currently I'm on with this deck. So firstly, I'm gonna go through my IDC 26 winning list, which is the start of this list. There have been many rugs before that. I took inspirations from a lot of them, but this is the deck I made by trimming a bit of the heavy stuff to make the deck a bit faster and playing rebirths, which you will see later. So, starting off, we have 4 of Gonta. That is pretty standard. You should always have 4 Gontas in your rug. Next up, we have 4 Quixotic to add more 2-drops. So that's pretty standard stuff. So those you will see in Rush also. Then the first, I don't know, innovation. A lot of people play it, but I'm playing the 4 Spiral Gate here to make the deck a bit faster and more nimble, and not playing the 4 Surfer, and instead choosing to take the less impactful trigger, but the more usable from hand trigger. And then we are gonna be going to 4 of Holocos. The card that is one of the best 3-drops, gives you more gas to continue pushing, and is a great top deck in the late game to give you a little bit more gas to push over the edge. Then we have 4 Bronze Tribe, one of the staples in many decks, and even in this aggro deck, since we are going not a rush deck and we are going a bit like more top end, we really want a card that can ramp us there faster, and Bronze Tribe does that the best. And it's a great soul swap beta also. And then we have 2 of Pyrofighter, just to have a bit more reach for the opponent. Pretty basic. Then we have 2 swaps. This is a card that doesn't really, it's not crucial in this deck, but it helps us cheat out more of the big stuff that's coming later. And it's also a trigger that can save us in a pinch. And just very versatile card that is pretty standard in many decks. More so in controls, but also in the heavier aggros. It does a lot of good stuff. Then we have some one-offs. We have, in this list, I'm playing at 4, the 4-drops. We have Lucky Ball, Unicorn Fish, and Hyper Sprint for users all. So we have 1 of each, just to give us options for the rebirth. So we can go do a lot of stuff. If they have a 4-drop on board, we can rebirth and then choose which one we want. A lot of the time we can't really, that's the ideal situation, but most of the time maybe one of them is in shield, so we already have one, but at least we have like a couple of options to choose from usually. Then for 5-drops, in this list I was playing 1 Windaxe, 1 Ancient Horn, and 2 Earthstorm Giants as creatures. Windaxe just to ramp us a bit more, and it's a great blocker removal for Trash Crawlers and Belixes, but there's not really a lot of targets for this, so in the later lists you see me cut this. And also having more multicolored cards, it can be a pain. Then we have Ancient Horn, one of the cards I really like in this list. It enables us to do a lot of cheating, maybe 16 mana in 1 turn with Rebirth, and that can really be crushing for a lot of opponents. So when you're the aggro, usually the opponent doesn't have time to break your shields, or if they break your shields, you really don't mind because it just gives you more fuel. And with Ancient Horn, what we can do is when we put this creature into the battle zone, if we have 5 or more shields, we can untap all the cards in the mana zone. So basically, we get a 5k creature for free, and then we can just do more stuff with it. So we can play Ancient Horn into Earthstomp, or we can rebirth a 5-drop, take Ancient Horn, and then play more stuff. So it enables us to do a lot of things in one turn, and the hope is that the opponent can deal with all that stuff. Then for this winning list, we were playing 2 Earthstomp Giants. And this is a really interesting card, since we really we have a lot of spells in this deck. Well, not a lot, but enough to make the Earthstomp not game ruining for us if we attack with it. So if we have 2 spells where with Earthstomp Giant, when we attack, we take all the other cards, all the creatures from the mana zone to our hand, and then we can start playing those creatures again. So it's kind of a refuel card. Also, it's just a big boy in 5. 8k creature double breaker, so if they can't answer it, it can just win us the game. But the downside is it's a bit slow, so if we just play it on 5 and the opponent can remove it easily with Miraculous Snare or something, or just bounce it, then we are really losing a lot of tempo, and it can be a bit of a pain. Just to keep in mind. Then, for 5-drop spells, we have 3 Searing Waves. Just to keep the deck it helps us clear a lot of whiteboards against weenies. Like a lot of rush decks that could be faster than us, the Searing Wave can stabilize us, and then we can, after the Searing Wave, we can go for game. Because a lot of time, some decks can just put a lot of creatures on board and we can't really deal with all of them, especially when they're untapped. So Searing Waves gives us that threat to clear their board if they just keep stacking creatures on board. So having 3 of them, it's pretty likely we'll have 1 in hand on 5. And it keeps us more threatening against all the other aggros as well. And we have bigger stuff usually than them, so if they don't attack, we have the Searing Wave, and if they do attack, we usually have bigger stuff to swing back and clear their board. Then, at 6, we have 2 Yagalzors. I'm gonna be making a little bit of room here. Yeah, so 2 Yagalzors, just to have a pretty explosive turn at 6, or even earlier. Maybe with the help of Soul Swap, we can swap it in a bit earlier. So Yagalzor helps us, when we attack, when we put it in the field, we can attack with one of our creatures already on the board, and then that Turbo Rush Turbo ability is the one that gives us speed attacker on all of our creatures. So we can immediately attack with Yagalzor as well for double break, and if we can put other creatures on board with Yagalzor, we can attack with those as well. So usually Yagalzor is the game-ending card for this deck. And at this list we have 2 of them, so it's pretty likely to see it in the game. Then we have 1-off Surfer. This is just to have a little bit more defense against other aggros. Having it as a 1-off is not really likely to be in shields, but it's a possibility. And then we have the 2 rebirths just to enable it. So if the opponent is playing Surfers as well, he can rebirth the Surfer and take our own Surfer from the deck and bounce something from them. So we have a defensive option at 6 as well. So we have offense, it's the Yagalzors, and defense, the Surfers. That's what we are doing at most of the slots. So at 5, we don't have a defensive option here, but that's going to be changing in the later lists. So at 5, we pretty much have all offense. And then at 4 we have the Usasol for offense, Unicorn Fish for defense, and Lucky Ball mostly for offense, but just to refill our hand so it can serve for multi-purpose. And then just to round out the deck, we have one Delacerna, just to have the threat of if they discard us, they might lose the game just to that. So if we have Delacerna in hand and opponent discards us and they discard Delacerna, it comes to field and it can just immediately start breaking their shield and go for game. So this is the IDC 26 winning lists. It's pretty alright, but just after the IDC that I won, I've made some changes to it, just to keep the deck, make it even more powerful. So unfortunately, the first thing that was cut from the list, here I have the cards that will be added. The first cut was the Earthstorm Giant, because the Earthstorm Giant is just, sometimes it's just too slow. It can work, but the risk of just playing a big creature that gets immediately cheaply removed is too high, so I decided to cut that from the list. And I think the first thing I added was a 1 more 2-drop, so we added Essence Elf, just to have slightly more chances of getting a 2-drop on turn 2. Then I think the other thing I added after that, we have cards. I think the other thing to add was, I'm not really sure what I added first, but especially, I think one Lucky Ball is fine to add. So just to have more draw. But also after I've done some playing with it, I've decided to also cut Windax just to get one more multicolor off, since the rebirths are really like one of the most fun things about this deck, and Gontas are stable. That leaves us one multicolored thing to cut from the list, so it's Windax. We have a bounce already in the deck in form of Spiral Gates and Unicorn Fish and Surfer. And if we are removing the blocker, we are usually just going for game anyway, so destroying it doesn't really make that much of a difference. So we've got Windax as well, and to the list we've added in the 5, the first thing I added was Karile. So that kind of serves the same purpose as Windax in removing a blocker, but Karile can also be more defensive minded. So if we rebirth a 5-drop, we can take Karile, and Karile can take out another creature, and like they don't draw any card, they draw that card. So it can be a defensive option, because Windax only targets blockers, Karile can target anything. So it's more versatile in that way. Then things I changed for, I just placed second in the CIDC 4. So the list that I was running in that tournament, I think one Lucky Ball was off, so I was only having 3 4-drops. One Yagalsor was cut, so I could run 2 Surfers and 1 Bombat General of Speed. So this list was more attuned for aggro, because I was predicting a little bit more aggro than usual. I wanted a second Surfer in the deck, and I also wanted the 5-drop speed attacker, so we can have 3, 4, and 5, and also 6 options for the rebirth. So we could always have a speed attacker ready if we have rebirth. Well, not always, because these are 1-offs and they might be in the mana or in shields, but you get my point. And this was the list I placed second in CIDC with. This was pretty okay. I think this is pretty much like Well, depending on what you're gonna be facing, it's a very balanced deck. So it has 8 triggers to save you from enemy attacks. It also has 3 searing waves to really give you board wipes. It has it can be a bit like slow sometimes. If you miss your 2-drop, you have 9 of them, but you sometimes still do miss your 2-drop. But it can like pretty fast even get back into the game with pretty powerful things like Ancient Horn or Rebirth and Yagal. So those are things that get you very a lot of tempo in a short amount of time. So this was the list I'm running. I was running then, but after that I've also experimented with the stuff. I've cut Usazol for one more Lucky Ball because I found that I really wanted one more Lucky Ball to give more good top decks, and the only really good place to cut was another 4-drop, since I didn't want to have the. I really didn't see any other thing that could be cut, and I decided to cut the users all to keep the 4-drops the same. It does leave us with one less fire mana, but I think that is okay in this list. Uh, so this list does not have the users all, which is sometimes a shame, but sometimes it's fine. Also, one thing I'm currently experimenting with is so like this. I'm gonna be doing. This is the list I'm very confident in can do well, and then from here on out, I'm just showing you more options you can do. Since Rebirth allows you to like make this deck like what you want, you can have a lot of tools in it, and the tools are different from each deck. So I've decided to take this out, add this in. I've also decided to take out one Spiral Gate for an Emerald. So we have one less shield trigger, but we have one shield trigger placer. So it's kind of a wash in that Emerald placing a surfer is really powerful, but we also like have one less trigger, so it's a little less like I don't know if it's less defensive, more defensive, but the best thing about having Emerald is that we have something playable on turn 2. So now we have 10 2-drops we can potentially play just to have more consistent aggro. And the last thing, which I've been having this, I've been experimenting with Royal Turian. Since we got one shield trigger with the Emerald, I've been starting to experiment with taking out Coral, since they are kind of the same thing, not really, but they are in the same utility slot. So Royal Durian is just it's a meme card I'm currently trying. So when you put this creature, just try to focus, when you put this creature into the battle zone, put the top card of each evolution creature from the battle zone into its own mana zone. So the main things this counters is Alcadeus and Alzonius. So those are the big threats that this could potentially counter. Um, so against Alzonius, it's a little bit more consistent since we can search it with the Rebirth. But we can also, in those matchups, we can potentially place it in shields. Probably a little bit too slow, but it's just something fun I'm trying currently. And it's, at worst, it's a shield trigger creature that is a 1k creature that can at least attack shields if it's broken into. So it can't be that bad. But if you want to have the more consistent option, Coral is the more consistent option. But Coral is another trigger, so these are just some things you can experiment with. And there's also more options, like at 3, there's the Chalmes, a creature that destroys a 3k or less creature if the opponent has 2 or fewer shields. So that's one thing you could try to add even more options for your Rebirth. So you have every possible option at every possible like number. That's what's fun about this. Like the Rebirth allows you to have a really fun deck that feels different a lot. Like the games you play are different each time because you have a lot of deck options for different matchups. So that's what makes it fun. Yeah, that's about it. So hope you enjoyed this list. Maybe you can try making similar lists of your own, and that's about it.